All right, can everyone hear me? Good afternoon. Oh, let's try it one more time. Good afternoon. Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for being with us at this session, Pathways, Runways, and On-Ramps. My name is Dr. Ian Saunders. I am the Artistic Director for Project STEP in Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues here on the left. And today, we are going to be examining existing models of prep and pathways programs, exploring their potency and capacity for greater systematic change. So in order to dive right into this rich conversation, I wanted to invite you all to read about their body of work and their biographies, and then hop in the app. If you are joining us online, you have to go out of the live stream in order to click on their bios, but I assure you that is fantastic as well. So to dive right in, I'm gonna let each of my colleagues introduce themselves, tell you where they're from, and then one thing that excites you about being here at SphinxConnect this year.
Thank you, Ian. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Call. I'm the Associate Dean for Preparatory and Public Programs at the Cleveland Institute of Music. And I've worked with youth for 23 years as an educator. And what excites me most about being at the Sphinx Conference is, sorry, I have two. I'm already breaking the rules. Is that I'm here in person. I've only ever been virtually, so this is very exciting. And two, my instrument area is in voice, and so Denise Graves.
Hello, my name is Enrique. Is this on? My name is Enrique Márquez. I think I'll use this one. Hello, I think this is a little better. My name is Enrique Márquez. I am Assistant Dean for Youth Programs and Director of Precollege at Manhattan School of Music. I am an alum of Sphinx Lead, so it's great to be here in person. Thank you, Ian, for moderating. Thank you, Afa and Erin, for just creating this amazing movement of people like us committed to transformation, change, and just excellence toward music. I love being here. I feel so welcome, like part of a family, la familia, as we call it at Sphinx. So I'm just glad that this is happening and that we're all here committed to just transforming the, our music world and to help our young folks get ahead in life. Thank you.
Adrienne Thompson. I am excited about being here. I am from Chicago, Marriott School of Music and Chicago Musical Pathways Initiative. But what I am really excited about is that you can't come to Sphinx without going home having met a whole new set of people. And so that's what is one of the exciting things about being here and what I look forward to. So feel free to come and say hello if you see me someplace in the building, and tell me who you are.
So look out into the audience. I know a lot of you are in pathways programs and prep programs as well. So we're just as eager to hear from you through your questions also. So I have a quick survey because we have two options as far as questions. We can either A, have questions throughout the session, which is great because we can sort of shape the trajectory of the conversation through this collaboration between us and the audience, or B, we can just have a question section at the end. You can hear what we have to say, and then you base your questions on that. So I just want to take a quick poll. As far as option A, questions throughout, who's down for that? Okay. Easy math. Option B, who's down for that? All right, I think the B's have it. So we'll have questions a little later on in the session as well. So let's just jump right into it, all right, with the first question. So I'm gonna ask you all, what roles do you feel prep and pathways programs play in the connectivity of the pipeline? I think we all are familiar with that metaphor. And what responsibilities do they have in regard to the intentional focus of inclusion? Let's start with Enrique.
Thank you. I'd like to just give a little bit of context. I believe pre-college programs are essential, but we're part of an ecosystem of youth music programs, such as boarding schools. I see friends from Interlochen here, fellow students. Hello. After school programs like Project STEP, community programs, Saturday orchestras, local orchestras, all-state orchestras, all-state programs in every state. I think it's a wonderful thing that this country has. There are boarding schools, there are festivals, and there are pre-college programs. We have a consortium of pre-college programs in the U.S., which is MSM, Juilliard, Mannes, Colburn, NEC, Peabody, Royal Conservatory of Music in Toronto. I hope that more universities would take this model because I think it works really well, providing students with a rigorous, intense, comprehensive music program on Saturdays. That's what we do. Also, something that I've seen in over time is a transition. Students nowadays, many of them are pre-college students or students in boarding schools, are keen on going into, say, Ivy League school, Research One schools, and conservatories. I think 20 years ago, most of us wanted to go into music school or conservatory or a place like Indiana University, U of M, Eastman, and so on, who have very strong music programs, very strong academic programs. I think that is an interesting shift. I think it's totally fine that our students want to go to Ivy Leagues. At MSM Pre-College, about 15% of our graduating students go to Ivy League school, which is, it's really hard to get into. As far as the pipeline, I think it's key for us to engage students in the area, in our case, the tri-state area, who want to join our programs through scholarships, recruitment, partnering with other programs to be part of, in this case, MSM Pre-College. We have 500 students. We have 4 orchestras, 3 choirs, concerto competitions, festivals, faculty recitals. It's really a large program. We have 160 faculty members, 38 are MSM College faculty, and our students are really quite excellent. New York City is quite a diverse city, so we're trying to portray the city. I'd like to say actually one statistic that I thought about today. 100% of MSM Pre-College staff is BIPOC and LGBTQIA+, which is kind of great. So we're representing in a way what we're talking about, like we're doing it. I think that's something that MSM is approaching doing really well. And so I think we're a key institution to pre-college programs to serve youth around the country. The transcript has quite a bit of weight in the admissions process for the universities. Many of our students, I often sign transcripts to send to all kinds of schools. So I know that they are very hungry. And I think we have to just keep pushing, keep furthering diversity in our programs.
I think the biggest thing that we do is to tell kids that they are possible. So often they think about their aspirations as being impossible, but in a pathway program they start to learn that the things that they're interested in and the things that they want to do, they can do it. So it's like, I remember a student coming and auditioning for the TDP program in Atlanta, 7th grader, watching him wait to go on stage, the Atlanta Symphony stage, to do his audition. And it's like he says, I want to be an orchestra musician. This is a 7th grader. And he did not even make it into the TDP program that year. He had to come back and audition again in 8th grade before he was accepted. But now he's playing with the Kansas City Symphony. So those are the things that I have seen, and we hired him to come to Chicago to talk with our trombone players. So we're telling them, go for it. And the other responsibility that we have is to answer the questions that they don't know how to ask, so that they will be prepared for the next steps as they come to realizing whatever their career ambition might be.
And similarly, I think the other thing that we provide is a community for students to find people like themselves, people that love this as much as they do. And when finding that community, then they push each other and they inspire each other and they have fun with each other and they laugh together and cry together and create this family, as we talked about having here at Sphinx, that can help them through the challenges of a music career, not just when they're in high school and in these programs, but as they go on into school and as they go on into their careers. They've created this bond to sustain them through those hard times that we all know happen, reality, and that can begin in their pathway program.
Great, I love what you said about the community there. The other question kind of related to support, there are certain hallmarks that are starting to pop up in a lot of pathways programs and prep programs as well. One being full financial assistance, ongoing and multi-year support for both parents and families, mentorship, and supporting the student holistically. I'm curious if there are other areas as far as support that are sort of crucial for the development of students that you see in your pathways programs and prep programs.
I think it's important that we create a web in the sense that the training is not just what happens between the student and the teacher. The training that they receive when they go to the summer music programs is an important, and it's not even like an enrichment or supplement, but it's really necessary in order for them to be as well prepared as they can be or should be. Getting an opportunity, if you are kind of top of the heap in your high school or in your youth symphony or in your all-state orchestra, getting a chance to go to camp to see that there's a whole bunch of youths that are out there, those students come back with a better understanding of why they are practicing, because they know that there are other students out there that are at the same level as they are or above, which inspires them to keep shooting for what they're doing. So it's like they have the relationship with the private teacher. They have the opportunity to go to camps. They have the opportunity to immerse themselves in the environment by being able to attend performances of professional orchestras. When my kids were little, we never bought the CD, the Youth Symphony CD, because I didn't want my kids listening to it over and over thinking that was the standard that they were aspiring to. We bought the CDs of the professional orchestras. That's what I wanted them to listen to over and over again. So they have that opportunity. They have the opportunity, and we are remiss if we don't provide this for them. They have the opportunity to also see and meet and talk to and get to network with other musicians of color who have already achieved what they are striving for. It's important for them to know that there are some people that have had the opportunity for success, and they can become a friend, and that person can also be someone who encourages them. It's important for parents to get a chance to talk to other parents. So way back in the day, one of my children was in the Sphinx competition, and there was another parent said, "Oh, I always take my son so he can have a manicure before he competes." It's like, really? You know, it's not anything that I thought about. But the parents, we learn from each other as well in terms of how we can support our children so that they can continue. So as much as we can create the environment for them that they are going to end up in early, then the more support they have to be able to continue their journey.
I'd like to add that the support that one student needs isn't the same support that another student needs. So the program needs to anticipate needs that you think will happen, but also have the awareness to address needs that come up that a student doesn't even know that they need, or that a parent doesn't know that they need, but you as faculty or administrator can see that there's a gap or there's something that this student needs, and your program allows that to happen, that you're able to meet that need. And it can be as well, I won't say simple, but it can be something like transportation, that's the barrier to getting to the lesson. It could be something like, and I've done this with our students, scheduling, figuring out their weekly schedule, because some students don't know how to do that. And so it's finding those places on an individual basis, because every kid is different and every kid's needs are different. And being able to look at it from an educator's perspective, this is where you need to be, this is where you are, let's get the steps for you to get there.
Yes, I agree. Also, I think sometimes parents need some support in terms of guidance for, well, in one instance, college applications to music schools. Often high schools have a strong counselor for academic programs. They don't really know what it is like to apply for a music school or life in music. So I often talk to parents and they are asking for more support with that. So we're thinking of having just sessions for them to talk about that with MSM admissions and with other experts in counseling, academic counseling. I think it's also important to, repertoire is a big thing that we need to be addressing. We're actively trying to program, at least in each concert for our orchestra concerts, BIPOC composer, more and more. I think the canon is important, but the canon is expanding and the canon needs revision, as we all know here. I'm preaching to the choir here, but so something that we're trying to do also. And also, I see some students need like a second or a third chance sometimes. Switching a teacher, you know, a thing happening at home that's affecting their academic progress. So sometimes just taking case by case, being understanding of situation, trying to put yourself in the shoes of a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old who doesn't really know very much about how it is in music. And we're also trying to bring in more universities to talk to our students about admissions. But I think, yeah, it's support is very much needed. But it's a large scope of what we need to address. I think faculty are great. I mean, they are I think the most essential part of our programs. And they talk to students quite a bit more than administrators do. So they can often guide them in ways that we can also. I think we're here in a way to serve students, number one, and faculty. Faculty, I think, are just the essence of music education. And they often really know how to talk to students, how to help them, how to support them, and how to also support students in different parts of their training. If it's different to talk to a 7-year-old than a 17-year-old. Some students flourish a little bit later than others. Some flourish soon and then they get stuck. So anyway, we just always try to encourage them. And part of MSM's mission statement for pre-college is to promote an atmosphere of warmth and support, that encourages all students to achieve their greatest potential. So we include warmth and support in our mission statement. I think that is powerful to have that as a guiding force for us.
There were a lot of terrific things. I want to kind of circle back to the first thing, Adrienne, I love what you said about the parents. And so if we have any parents out there, God bless, because it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. I know one thing that I've noticed in Project STEP for sure is that a lot of this information kind of gets passed down from parents to parents. Like they tend to know how to speak the language. There are a lot of colloquialisms that we sort of take for granted, right? It's just like, two contrasting pieces. And parents are like, well, I'm not sure what that means, right? And so it's beautiful to have this community of parents who can kind of speak to each other because that information sort of gets passed down, which is incredible. And then also, Jennifer, I wanted to come back to something you said and ask you as well, that there is this importance not to have this sort of rigidity, right, so much in the curriculum that you just can't pivot, because at the end of the day, we're talking about development of students, right? So I just wanted to ask Enrique and Adrienne if you had any examples when you know the curriculum isn't quite working out that way, and so what do you sort of look for if you're going to sort of work with a student on an individual basis and avoid being so rigid with them?
So we have checkpoints, and we have regular checkpoints. So those checkpoints include when they first come into the program and they do an audition, you know what they sounded like then. The other things that happen is that there's a jury that is held every semester. There are recitals where you get a chance to hear them again, perform again. And because the jury process involves comments that we get from professionals from the community who are not directly involved in the program, we have this snapshot of where they are right then, but because this is a program where we keep up with what they did the last time we heard them play, what kind of comments they got in the last jury, then we have an individual curriculum reference for every student that is in the program. And so we don't look at the process as being something that is a vertical snapshot. It is a vertical. As a horizontal snapshot. But we look at it as something that is a vertical continuation. So I know what happened with the student the last time they played. And I know what we said we were going to do in terms of addressing whatever that is. So it's like you told me that you were going to use the metronome 5 days a week. Have you been using your metronome? So you were told that there were problems with your intonation when you shifted into whatever position. And nobody said anything about intonation when you had this jury. That means that you have made progress, and that also means that I never again want to see a jury comment about intonation. Let's move so that what they're talking to you now is about your phrasing, about your musicality, because you have gotten past that point. Let's not go back. So we know what's happening with the students. We know what they need musically to work on next. We have this kind of standard that doesn't move in terms of what we know the kids should be shooting for in order to be competitive nationally and internationally for the schools that they are interested in attending. And so we are always kind of going up that plane to keep that in the mindset of both the student, and because these advisories are also held with the private teacher, then we're all on the same page, the student, the parent, the teacher, the program, about what we are striving for in terms of what we'd like to see the next time we have the formal jury. But again, we also have those benchmarks when we hear them perform in their recitals and master classes and the other things that they do. So that's what makes it so easy for us to really speak to whatever the needs are of the students, because we know them.
Thank you. Those are great examples. Yeah, we also try to, when we ever have competition or adjudicators, we tell them to just provide constructive criticism, to be positive to our students so they know what they can improve. They know what they did wrong, so there's no need for us to remind them of that. Sometimes a student asks to move to a different orchestra, to a higher level orchestra. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they need to stay there just to really, that's what their right source for them to be performing. Sometimes we need to be a little bit, not strict, but just to let them know that they need to do this before they can move on. Sometimes we need to have a student skip because they're doing so much better. They grew so much in a semester they can move up. These create sometimes difficulties with conductors, but I think it's our duty to serve our students. I think the curriculum, it's something it's key. I think we're always trying to, not reinvent it, but adjust it, tweak it, make it more relevant to what we do today in the real world. Sometimes that we also, what I'm not doing anymore at MSM, is that if a student got, say, a C in theory, they can enter concerto competition. We should not punish someone in theory, in performing because they got a bad grade in theory, or they were not doing something at home was not working out. So I think it's just to be flexible, to be more, willing to let them perform, which I think is a big part of our students are looking for, the young musicians in particular. So I think it's flexibility guided by criteria, which in my case, I'm a musician, faculty are outstanding, so we always have a great source of knowledge in a way in the room to make these choices.
Great, looks like we have a question here.
Hi, I'm Rachel Barton Pine, longtime Sphinx board member and president of the RBP Foundation with our Music by Black Composers project, which you're probably familiar with, but I wanted to first of all just say to all of you or any teachers, programs in the room, we're always eager to hear from you, to hear what further resources we can provide, and just any help, any partnerships that we can do with you on the repertoire side of things. I was thinking, I'm always thinking about where are there still areas that we need to improve, and we meaning the music world. And some of the things that I'm observing as a parent now, in terms of the world that exists and the world that the current crop of pre-college students is going to move into at the college level, and there's been a lot of improvement. There are still plenty of institutions where their entrance auditions don't include anything beyond the old standard rep, where their jury requirements, same thing. Junior, senior recital requirements, same thing. Pre-college level, you see concerto competitions, you have to pick a piece from this repertoire list. It's the same thing it was 20 years ago. You have all-state type competitions, other kinds of local competitions. I'm wondering, all of us have to do everything we can to advocate in these areas. I'm thinking more from the repertoire side, but I would love to ask you just a very open-ended question about anything as regards inclusion, like what are all the areas in which all of us should be advocating for the world that we want these students to inherit?
Does anyone want to go first, or?
Wow, that is. I think it's the reason we're all here. Honestly, it's such an important question. We do not have it figured out, but we know we have to do it. We know we have to work on it. One of the things we did in our we did a whole program realignment and wrote new curriculum, was change our audition requirements to 2 songs. One that shows your level and one that you love. And there is no list, because we want to see you as a musician. We want you to show up as your authentic self, and we can then see, are we a good match for each other? And if they come in and perform, as a vocalist, if they come in and sing two pop songs, and they're really interested in learning vocal technique and growing, then we could be a good match for each other. Yeah, you're going to learn something other than pop music. Is that okay? We ask them, but then we can bring them to us in their way, as respecting them as musicians. And I think that was a great first step, and we're still growing into that. And it's something our faculty was not accustomed to, so it took a lot of conversation there. But we all want to do the right thing. Our heart is in the right place, and so we take these steps and hold our breath almost, assuming that the collegiate level is going to make these same steps. So as our students are learning a more diverse repertoire, when they get to their college auditions, they're going to be able to perform the music that they have learned at this very high level, because the schools that they're going to have also done this work. So it's a little bit of hold your breath, because we're in this work together, but we know that people in this room and at this conference are doing this work. So for me, I feel like, yes, we're making baby steps, but we are walking together.
Rachel, the revolution is occurring. So it's like, for my kids, the only time that they learned a music by a pop composer was when he came, this is in the 90s, when he came and auditioned for, when he was part of the Sphinx Laureate class, and they required that they learn, a composition. Only time. Youth orchestras, interlocking, no work was done by BIPOC composers. I don't think that we have any child in our program that has not played a piece by BIPOC composer in some organization that they are performing with. I also know that just about every senior in our program, and there are about 16 this year, has had to learn a piece by a BIPOC composer because the colleges are now requiring them to do it. So I think it is happening, and the experiences that they are having now is more, not like we're doing something that is completely special, but I think that they will start to see it as just part of the landscape, that they will have exposure. So I am encouraged by the things that I'm seeing now.
I quickly, I think I agree. I was asked a composer this question about commissioning. He said, it's good to commission, it's also good to perform music that is already written. If we keep commissioning, we will never get to perform what is written. That's a controversial thing I'm saying. But I think it's also important to play our music that is already written, and also for the stage to represent the composer. That we have a balanced orchestra or choir or jazz band that are actually diverse and plural. So it's great. We're working on a new music ensemble next year at MSM Precollege. I think it'd be great to have our young students get to know the works of Julius Eastman. So many people, Pauline Oliveros, and so many folks that I think are often not performed. I heard a student the other day say Shostakovich is a contemporary composer. So that's sort of it's 20th century, but it's not really anymore a contemporary composer. So I think we need to educate our students to know about new music. I think it's key. I think it's interesting. It's fun. It's sometimes hard to digest sometimes, but I'm the biggest advocate for it, and I think our students would benefit greatly from just getting used to playing it on a regular basis for their lessons to music, choir, or orchestra. So I think it's our duty to program it and to make sure that it is performed.
Yeah, I would say to speak to that, and just to add on to that, I think as far as areas of opportunity, what was mentioned earlier with the auditions, that is definitely operating within sort of the ecosystem and working with others. I know, for example, people like Weston Sprott are really trying to change that way when you go on, that is in place. I think another area of opportunity for Pathways programs is when we have these BIPOC composers to include it in the pedagogy. Mozart does not have the Márquez cornered on spiccato, so there's no reason why you just have to teach it that way. I know in Project STEP, students just play a wonderful piece by Quinn Mason. It could be a teaching piece. It doesn't have to be separate as like, here's a piece by a BIPOC composer. So I think there are a lot of beautiful opportunities to commission works, to work on other things, and to work with a lot of these great resources here at Sphinx today. I know Caso Varskins is doing a lot of great work with Anthony Green. I know there's a lot of great repertoire on 50 for the Future. There are a lot of things out there. So I think by incorporating it more into what is actually being taught as well, that'll also spearhead those things kind of manifesting in auditions as well when we work together in the ecosystem. So that is my take on it as well. Next question.
So this question is coming anonymously from the Hopin app. It states, what has the conversation around teaching and neurodivergence look like for you and your organization? And what successes/challenges have you encountered when addressing this with your students?
Great question. Could you repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
What has the conversation around teaching and neurodivergence look like for you and your organization? And what successes/challenges have you encountered when addressing this with your students?
I can start. My background is in music ed, and I taught public school for 12 years before I went into community music. And in the public school classroom, neurodivergence is something that you deal with on a daily basis. It's part of teaching, it's part of your world and part of your life, and so you learn the strategies, you have the support, you have the professionals in your building to help you learn how to do that. When I made the shift to community music, that didn't exist. That ability to help you understand what was going on didn't exist. And I feel like it's something that we still struggle with at this point. I've had many conversations with faculty about how to address a neurodivergent student, what they need, and I think it's only because of my experience as a public school music teacher. And so I'm their support person, but I don't really even feel qualified to do it. From my perspective, we have more work to do in that area because there's some amazing, gorgeous musicians who just learn differently, and that's not their fault. And it's our responsibility.
We take the kids as they come, and so therefore when they get into the program, once we find, because we know our kids individually, once we find that they may need something different from us, then it is our job to help provide what they need so that they can be successful.
In our case, we sometimes let the parent be with the student during the day. We'll inform their theory ear training and chair music coach about the student needs so that they can have more support. We have theory tutors for them to all day to work on homework assignments or going over the assignment with them. So some of our really great students have this experience. So it's, I think music, sort of they feel so comfortable making music, they feel so at home. It's like they're finally there with all musicians for an entire day on Saturday making music and just having a good time in rehearsal, that we see them sort of smiling the entire day, and we get to know the parents and we get to know them. So I think we're always just if they're in, we will support them all the way.
Great. We have another question.
Hello, thanks for the talk so far. My name is Márquez Lindsay Bradley. I'm a clarinetist from the great city of Philadelphia, and I'm currently a senior at the Cleveland Institute. I'm an alumni of the PMA program, but I've worked with several others in many different capacities as a guest speaker, a mentor, and a bunch of other stuff, performing and whatnot. And it's been a great time. Something that my friends and I in these programs we've moved on from. We still stay in contact, believe it or not. We're all friends. And I feel like there's a model that I observe you guys as the program leaders and managers presenting to us that somehow disconnects from the goals and dreams that we have. And I think you guys have already touched on the solution to that, which is to put yourself in the eyes of a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old who is really making that switch, or maybe they've already been there for a while, to pursuing their instrument to continue their own story as a whole person. And I wonder, what can we do with the current model so that we can allow for maybe the next Lizzo to come out of a pathway program? Would she be supported right now in your programs with her interest and her goals? And it may not be practicing all of the technique books for the next 4 years, but maybe it's actually learning to compose and arrange and still getting the integrity of what classical music as a training has to offer, but also pursuing our new world economy, because the violin jobs open up, and the flute jobs open up, but we're all here doing what we do. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
one thing that I've learned from being involved in Pathways programs since 1994 or 5 is that the only thing that we can do is make sure that they are able to develop on their instrument. So, for instance, if I had had Lizzo as a high school student, what she would have been hearing from me is, practice this scale, learn this etude. in terms of increasing her proficiency on her instrument. However, what I want you to know is that I know that by making sure that the students are prepared to have the best opportunities that they want, they are going to find what it is that speaks to them the most. But they need additional training in order to decide what is the path that they are going to choose for themselves. So, for instance, how many of you know Xavier Foley? Okay, so he came through the program in Atlanta. When he was there, we were helping him to become a better bass player. He said that he wanted to be a composer. We did not teach him composing, but he had opportunities so that he could develop what was within him. So sometimes we have opportunities. If we have a student right now who is participating in Chicago with Jesse Montgomery, and it's a program that is helping him to learn more about composing. But that is something that the ones that want to be composers and who come through a pathway program, they will not be denied. They will have the opportunity to develop those skills. And so therefore, I would do them a disservice if I decided in high school that you are going to be this, and I started slanting somebody towards this. I'd rather help them become the best musician that they can be, and therefore they have more to offer when they decide they want to be a composer, or they want to be a this, or they want to be a that. So I don't know that we can make those kind of decisions when they're young, but I do know that the more that they learn about music and the more exposure they have and the more opportunity they have, that when it's time for them to make a decision about what their priorities are, we have kept doors open for them to be able to make those choices. And so one of the students that came through the program in Atlanta is now a jazz musician in China. We didn't prepare them for that when they were in high school, but they had the opportunity and they were supported in developing those skills on their own, and then that was the choice they made. And so that's kind of the way I try to approach it.
If I may, thank you for your question. I think it's a great question. I think there is also a great service to strive to master an instrument, a craft really well in the classical world. Because if you do, then you can play, I think, you can do so much. You can play popular music, you can do folk music, you can do all sorts of genres that I think classical music can help you achieve. Also, our curriculum is open in a way that you can take, classical theory, or you can take jazz theory. You can play trombone in the orchestra, you can trombone in the jazz combo. You can take film scoring if you're a violist, for example. You can take a secondary lesson in secondary instrument. So we try to have options for our students to grow in this way. And we do offer an entrepreneurship class that I think is also important to allow students to get to know that, because in a way, we're learning here we're our own sort of LLC or our agent or our own social media person. So the students are now, some students have millions of likes in TikTok, for example, in pre-college. So they're just out there doing great things. So we want to support them. But I think that in our case, our rigorous training can really help them achieve musically whatever they like, and that is fulfilling me to see them growing in different areas and just pursuing their passions.
Yeah, I would say quickly to that same extent that yes, you want to create these opportunities. You never want to stifle anyone's voice, right? But you want to make sure that they have, if you only have 10 words in your vocabulary, you're not going to have a lot to say at any one time. So you want to make sure you do that. I know I feel strongly about that, especially as a bass player. I mean, the nice thing about playing bass is everyone needs a good bass player. So, you're often open to these, different genres and opportunities there, but I still needed the rigor, if you will, from my teachers and things like that. But you work closely. You also make sure that the teachers know that you can still accomplish what the teacher wants and what the students wants, by working together to find that as well. But you always look for those opportunities that you can have there. So I would say as you can see, there's flexibility in those. And as we said before, it's important not to be rigid, because in development, everything's not cookie cutter for a student's development.
If I could just add, it's also about the way that we as faculty engage with a student on their interests. If a student comes to us and says, "Oh my gosh, I just heard this great Lizzo song," and you say, "Well, I don't want to listen to that," what does that do to that student? So I think our field is changing, and a modern musician is a multi-genre musician. And so as we're training young students to be a working musician, we need to make sure that they have the foundational tools to be able to do that. And that means they need to be exposed to so many different ways of making music with the rigor of learning that instrument so that they can do it. And I think the attitude of the faculty member to engage on the level of interest for that student is so important, so that you can say, "Yeah, let me hear it. Oh my gosh, did you hear how she did that? That was so cool." And just really listen to that student and what they are interested in. And then maybe the next time you're looking at repertoire for that particular student, you find something that's similar, something that can connect. That's how you work with kids.
Yep, next question.
Hi, my name is Jane Lindemood. I am the orchestra director at Dodge City Public Schools. I teach from 6th grade through high school with my assistant. And we are it. We are 2.5 hours from the nearest university. We are 3 hours from the nearest youth orchestra. We are an hour and change away from the next high school that also has a strings program. Given what we've learned about remote teaching and learning over the last several years, would any of your programs ever consider a remote branch, so that those of us that are so isolated, not like any of us need more to do, but I have kids that could do all of this, but with just myself and my assistant, we can't. Would you ever consider, or is that on a burner somewhere back front, doing some remote access to your programs for those that are further away from these types of resources?
I'd like to promote my friend Trey Davey, who is back there, Interlocken's president. Thank you for being here, Trey. Interlocken has a great online program, for example. You can take theory, you can take your training, you can take lessons. IU Bloomington has also a very good program in music education through the internet. So I think that those keep happening. I think it's wonderful for students like in your case. I think you're sort of like a local saint to really just do that for so many students whose lives are transforming every day. So I think that is happening. We are not doing that, but I mean, many other programs are, and they're doing a great job with doing that. So I think that exists, and it's wonderful that they can reach anybody all over the world, and especially in rural or remote areas of the country that have no access to a local conservatory or university.
I can say that in order to make something like that happen, somebody's got to find a funder. So it's something that is a possibility, but there would have to be someone that would say, let's provide some resources so that rural students can have these opportunities as well.
Hi, yes, next question.
Hi. We have another anonymous question from Hopin. It states, as you are choosing your faculty to work with your students, how do you screen a faculty member's aptitude to be flexible enough to support a student's self-chosen outcomes?
My question is almost the same, so if I can just add something to that, I appreciate what Enrique said about faculty, especially because I'm a member of Enrique's faculty, and I think that question gets to so much of what we've talked about: repertoire choice, flexibility to listen to other kinds of music and to get involved in other kinds of things. And so not just how you hire faculty, but also how you train or retrain or sort of mold the existing faculty. What are the strategies you use to make sure that the students are working with faculty who are open-minded and who are flexible and supportive, and also excellent practitioners of technical pedagogy, which clearly is important and is not the only thing that's important.
So, happens through the advisory process. We sit down with the teachers and the students formally twice a year. And so therefore, it is amazing in the sense that the jury comments come from peers that they respect. And when you have that in writing, and it is not me, the program, telling you this, but it is the professionals within your community telling you certain things, then that is a process that has allowed students and teachers, but particularly for teachers, it allows them to kind of think, am I doing this in the way that is most effective? And that is one of the most powerful tools that we have in terms of increasing that flexibility and inspiring change in terms of what they are looking at as their objectives. Now, if you get to a point where you see that it is not working, then you get a different teacher. So it is kind of something that you don't know for sure right from the beginning. You are doing what you think is in the best interest of the student. You are making what you think is in the best fit for the student, but that process allows everybody to have an opportunity to change if you use it effectively. And it is okay if you have to move on. It is okay if it's in the best interest of the students. We would not allow a student not to flourish or to languish because that relationship is not working.
I think two things. One, well, every institution is varying sizes up here and a little bit different. But I think one thing that could help a lot is actually being sort of proactive as far as recruiting. Who do you have to be one of your teachers? I know that's a big thing with STEP. So for example, we have players from A Far Cry and Cats Over Our Skins and Palaver Strings that work with our students. And if you know any of these groups, you know those are all incredible players in those groups, and they're about that life. You also come somewhere like Sphinx as well. And so I think you can also be proactive as well in trying to recruit those players, because those players are out there and they're growing by the numbers for sure. And I think if it has to do with a teacher who's already there, well, first it's kind of understanding where the resistance is. So as I mentioned before, one thing that I'll run into is, well, if I teach them this, then I can't teach them this technique. Or if I teach them this, I can't teach them that technique, right? And it's just being clear. It's just like, well, you can, once again, work there, and you just try to be patient. And as Adrienne said, if you are still having a hard time arriving there, then maybe some other discussions take place. But I think those two things, being proactive in recruiting, and then just noting where the resistance is and solving that, I find can solve a lot of things as well.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here and with this amazing panel. My question is, since we have addressed all the questions of repertoire and teaching relationships and community support, so what is happening at the pre-college level to assist the financial assistance for students who are in minorities that don't have access. Because I know, for example, I live in New York, all of those are expensive, period. My kids is unaffordable for them. But how we could find ways to create a network with the programs that can feed that option for the kids, because as we know, being in pre-college is a great enhancer for the opportunities at college level. So when a kid is in pre-college and they see that in the resume, they say, wow, so he's been 4 years in this, I think he's not going to spend time in the hallways. So he's doing what he's supposed to do, or she is supposed to do. So how is that financial component addressed?
Thank you so much, Samuel. We're finding that donors are increasingly interested in funding BIPOC students. It's something that is shifting, and I'm very grateful. I'm actively fundraising at Precollege with the president, with the advancement VP, and donors are asking more for that. As you know, MSM is, we're just starting a search to partner with youth local music education programs like UMCP, New Jersey, El Sistema New Jersey, Harmony program, to be a pipeline for MSM Pre-College, and we can provide great assistance, financial assistance for those students, so that they can be part of MSM Pre-College, to be part of our program, work with all of our students, be in our communities, in our orchestras, in our choirs. So I think it is very important, and I think institutions are taking that very seriously. It is very expensive to study. Our pre-college programs, I understand that very clearly, but it's something that I think also the donor base is changing, and they're very interested in funding specifically for an instrument or for a student of color. So I think I'm hopeful in the fundraising world that is happening, and we need to just commit to really funding students in terms of financial need, as well as academic merit, but academic and artistic merit, but financial need it's key, and that is, I think, the way forward, because that is just the beginning. Then is college, then is a master's. There's a lot of the instrument, the reeds, the strings, and so on, tuning the piano. So there is an ongoing expense with being a musician, which is also something that we would like to fund, provide instruments to students. I know many programs do that fully, but it's something that I think, at least in New York, we're all trying to do, and MSM, as you know, is committed to serving the local music education programs.
It takes a village. So I taught high school orchestra for 20 years, and I had to take the same way that our early questioner, asker, had the question. It's like I couldn't help everybody, but I knew I could help somebody. And so as an orchestra teacher, I had to teach them audition rep so that they could get into a pathway program. And I had to take that responsibility, even though as an orchestra teacher, I studied flute, and I just had to figure out what it was that they needed to know how to do. And I helped them to learn enough so that they could at least have a chance through going through the audition. And so probably everybody in this room could help one student who has that kind of ambition, could help them in some way that kind of helps to get them started. One of the students in my high school, the arrangement, how I helped him was that the elementary school teacher who fed my high school would come over to my classroom during lunch. The student would come down to my classroom during lunch and help them learn the Dittersdorf concerto. And that's how he learned it. He wasn't taking lessons, but he got into Oberlin. So it's kind of like anything that you can do to help somebody that wants to do this, try to figure it out. Sometimes people will do something that helps makes it possible for them to get to the next rung of the ladder.
There are several programs around the country, like the one at Cleveland Institute of Music called the Musical Pathway Fellowship, and that is a program for Black and Latinx students to participate on full scholarship in the full academy pre-college curriculum. And just this year, we expanded it to include the apprenticeship, which allows the opportunity for students as young as first grade to access the sequential curriculum, because we know that this barrier has existed forever. And if we are going to fix it, we need to put our money where our mouth is. In our most recent realignment, not only is there a financial barrier for some Black and Latinx students, not all, but there's also financial barrier for all students. So while we have the Musical Pathway Fellowship that's specifically a support network for Black and Latinx musicians, we have expanded our scholarship opportunity for students that are not Black and Latinx, because the money's a real thing. The money's a real thing. And if we can help close that gap, it's better for all of us. It's better for the entire musical community. So I'm proud of that work that we're doing, and continue to do and continue to fight for those extra dollars and every grant that we can, so that we can provide the opportunity for everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Enrique. Thank you, Adrienne. Can everyone help me in giving them a hand? Of course, if you have any other questions, we'll be around. I would love to engage in deeper conversation as well. In the meantime, stay well, stay safe. All right, everyone.